Well, g'day everyone and welcome back to the channel. Alright, our next step is to shape our handle. We've got that initial part in, so what I'm going to do is go over to the bandsaw. I'm just going to nip these off on the bandsaw just to make it a little shorter, and then I'm going to use the belt grinder to grind the handle to shape. But before we do that, we want to protect the work that we've already done on the blade. We don't want to get the blade scratched up, damaged. If we touch it on the belt grinder, if we touch it on the bandsaw, then we're going to get scratches on it. So we want to protect that. I'm going to use two types of tape for that. One's a painter's tape, which is very not sticky, so to speak. It won't tack and stay there on the blade. Of course, taping blades is always fun because oftentimes it'll cut the tape. So we're just going to give one layer of this. And the good part about this is it will come off quickly. Bit of a layer down the other side just to lock it all in place. Okay, so there's our first layer of protection. Next up, we're just going to use a duct tape. This is not an expensive one, but it is the fiber filled sort of one. Now this will give a lot more protection than the paper tape for resisting the grinder. So again, we're just putting a layer of that over the top. That way if we get any accidental touches, it's protected. Just fold in those excess bits and try and keep to the profile. It's just a lot easier without lots of bits of tape hanging out the sides. There we go, all nice and protected. Okay, a little bit about the setup before we get too carried away. I'm going to use a 40 grit belt, brand new, on the belt grinder. It's got a nice coarse grit, so it's going to hog the timber away quickly, and we're going to turn the speed down. So that's up at full setting. I don't want it up there. That's about the setting I want. When you're working with timber, you want to turn your speed down and not be working too quickly. Underneath, I've taken away my normal water bucket, and that's no longer sitting underneath because otherwise it's going to end up, there we are, bare floor underneath, and it means I can get up closer to the belt grinder. And we have the forge dog. Due to circumstances at home, I've just got Bob with me now, and so he's wanting to be wherever I am. So there he is, resting on the floor right next to me. He's not going to worry about the noise, but that does make me think really hard about putting an extraction system on the grinder very soon, so that he's not going to be sucking in dust. As you can see, I've cut those pins off. I haven't gone super close because my handle scales are so thin on this one. Haven't cut these ones off, never do. I grind them down because the actual thickness of the brass isn't far off where I'm going to have that front finish. So I don't want to accidentally scar that while I'm grinding. All right, let's get grinding. So we start by tipping the blade in and having the blade closest to the belt and just slowly working around in a curve. And we just want to keep grinding until the brass meets the timber. Okay, then we flip it over and do the bottom, and we do that to both sides. Next up, I'm just using the platen to shape the back, bringing the timber down to match. And then we use the top wheel just to do the exact same thing at the top. We're just getting the timber to match up with the steel, which is where we set our handle, and that's going to be down to the grip that we want. To smooth the sides of the handle, we use a 1-inch scallop belt and work with that one. Starting with the brass section, we're just going to rock it across the belt and just slowly take away those groin marks. This is using a 120 belt, and we're just easing away the groin marks that were left by the 40 grit. Once we got that all smoothed off, then we're just going to go through the handle. And extra attention to the brass pins because they're not going to grind as easy as the timber. So we're just rocking it backwards and forwards. Just clean it up as we go. Just again, it's getting those marks out that it's harder to see on the timber, but they're still there. And then once we've done one side, we go over to the other side. Next up, I'm using a 240 grit flat belt and just cleaning up the actual spine, the handle, all the flat sections of the handle. Just want to get those all cleaned up, and using a flat belt helps to keep you flat in that section. And then we'll progress the belts, doing a 240 of the scallop belt just to clean up and go through, take out the old marks. And then finally we'll use a 400 of the scallop belt, and we will also use a 400 flat belt again to clean up the spine, to clean up all the flat sections. Okay, we're getting close to the finishing stages now. We're going to use a calico wheel, just a little bit of green polishing compound on it. Okay, we take the timber section of the handle just to protect that timber. We don't want any of that polishing wax getting into it. And we're just going to buff back that brass work just to clean it up so it's nice and pretty and nice and consistent. When you're doing the grinding, it's hard to get the lines all blending together perfectly, whereas when you come across the polisher with using the buffing wheel, it's a lot easier to do it. And we'll just finish that off by hand buffing it just to make sure we've got all the wax back off it. Okay, and we're going to swap out for another calico wheel. This one has just been used with wax rather than the compound, so it's not going to leave a dirty mark on it, and it's going to wax it up beautifully. Okay, next we're going to use my homemade beeswax, and I'll throw a link up for the video on that. It's a mixture of beeswax, gum turpentine, and boiled linseed, and that's what I use to finish timber work on handles. Once we've got that rubbed on by hand, then we're just going to give it a good buffing on the wheel, and that helps to bring that shine in, helps to set that polish a little. It's a stabilized timber, so it's not really going to sink into the timber, but it will provide a nice outside coat on it. Okay, and there is our finished product. As you can see, it is looking pretty schmick. Once you polish it up like that, it just shows that beautiful timber through for its natural beauty. All right, so thank you very much everyone for watching, and bye for now.